Do you ever feel like you're juggling a million versions of yourself and still dropping the ball? Like you're switching hats all day, professional, partner, parent, friend, and no one really sees what it takes to just be you? Yeah, me too. Welcome to Hat Rack with Hannah. I'm Hannah, therapist, entrepreneur, author, podcast host, and also a mom, partner, daughter, friend, basically a professional hat wearer. I created this space where you don't have to minimize what you're carrying or rush past it. Because the truth is, you can have big dreams and feel overwhelmed by the roles it takes to hold them. Both get to exist. Here we slow it down, call it what it is, take some hats off, and figure out what actually belongs in your rack. So take a deep breath. You can set something down here, and let's get into it. Hello, Hat Rack listeners. Welcome to July. This is a deep summer month where we are all so in it, and it is beautiful, starting to get way too hot, especially in Colorado, but we are planned and busy. I don't know if you're starting to feel that summer. Whew, it's going to go by so fast because I have 100 things to do, but that is how it is over here. And managing that can be a whole thing in itself. But this month, we're going to talk about authentic alignment. It can be like kind of a buzzy term. So we're going to break it down in a way that makes sense and kind of give some steps and supports on how to feel your most aligned. And then we have an amazing guest. She will be joining us for 2 episodes because when we met for one, we honestly were just like, we are so vibing and we want to show Hat Rack with Hannah audience just how she does her work. So we have one episode where it's all about her, what she does. And then the second episode is going to be really focused on her showing how she does things. And I'm going to be her example client. So you can kind of see what this work looks like and then choose if it's good for you. She has awesome freebies to give listeners and could be someone that y'all work with. So that will be really exciting. So yeah, let's get into it. We're in the thick part of summer where all of the hats are being juggled. We are busy. We are working, summering, caretaking. I know for therapeutic business, that just means summer means a lot of networking and replanning for the year. It's kind of our like mid-year check-in. So I'm currently redoing a lot of policies and redoing procedures and all of those things. So it's just a really busy, fun, chaotic time. So, authentic alignment. What the hell does that even mean? Have you ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but something still feels off? Working hard, showing up, carrying the responsibilities, yet you feel like you're constantly swimming upstream. We often assume that when something feels difficult, we need to try harder, push more, figure it out, make it work. But what if the question isn't, how do I make this fit? What if the question is, does this fit? So today's conversation is about authentic alignment, not as a trendy self-help concept or the social media highlight reel, right? But as a practice of learning to recognize the difference between alignment and forcing things, listening to yourself and performing roles, and growth discomfort and misalignment. I often experience this. There are times in my life when I'm making decisions and I can see multiple paths in front of me, and some just completely flow together, and others I'm facing odd obstacles that should cause red flags, if you will, or have me slow up because it's actually not what's aligned or meant for me. A recent example of this is I'm currently launching Denver Whole Body Collective, which is going to bring Lola and Me therapy, the mental health space, and a whole body approach and different space together as one where we can focus on care of the whole person. And when I first started thinking about this with my partner, my business partner, Gavin, we came up with this concept and people just started flowing in. People who we've already met, people have been looking for the space for a long time. And all of a sudden it was just coming together. The suite next to us just opened up and it wasn't supposed to for like 3 years. So it just started happening. And I knew immediately, okay, well, this is flowing and like this is something I need to listen to and get into. Whereas I was approached with an opportunity to do a CEO spotlight. It was like an episode for something they were doing, and it was like an interview thing. And every meeting was a conflict with something else. I had to keep moving things to make it a priority. There was a financial component that I wasn't super comfortable with. Things just were not aligning. And that's just an example of like, okay, I totally authentically aligned and everything flowed for Denver Whole Body Collective. But for this episode of this TV series, nothing was aligning. And so I knew that wasn't for me. Could I have pushed that and made it for me? Absolutely. But it wasn't meant for me. A few examples of where this could fall in your life is like when you're hiring new team members. Sometimes it just clicks and you feel really good about it and it's a great partnership. And other times you're interviewing and you're trying to make it work because the person might be really cool or nice, but you're just not feeling that gut check, right? There are multiple right decisions and that can create a lot of tension, but sometimes your body can identify the decisions that you should go with, and we don't hear or make room to listen. So that is what this whole episode is going to be about, is figuring out what is actually aligned and how to actually come to the spaces where you're making decisions out of alignment versus just forcing things to happen. Some of the questions we're going to review and answer in this podcast today are: how do you know when you're forcing something? How do you know when you're listening to yourself? What role does the nervous system play in all of this? Because there's a big role. Where do boundaries fit into all of this? And how do you find clarity when you're feeling pulled in multiple directions? Alignment isn't about making life easier. It's just creating a life that requires less self-abandonment. And I think that's a really important thing to hone in on, is this self-abandonment component that society often forces us into. And when I say self-abandonment, I mean we're taking a departure from what we are supposed to be doing and we feel good about doing in order to be a part of a capitalistic society or fit a mold or fill a role that isn't actually yours or wear a hat that's not actually yours. I also want to name that oftentimes when we're trying to identify if something's aligned or we're forcing it, you can often feel these things before you can articulate it. But time is so quick and we move through things so quickly that we don't allow our body to feel if this is a good thing, or check our gut is what a lot of people will talk about, right? We often just move through it and then we end up in a position where, oh, this isn't meant for us. And then we have to take some steps back. So let's get into the term authentic alignment. So alignment, when I say that, when your values, body, decision, and life direction feel congruent. So it doesn't mean that it's easy or calm all the time or perfect. You can feel aligned and scared or aligned and grieving, and those things are okay. But it feels like movement with yourself. You're still working hard, you're still stretching, you're still doing difficult things, but there's a sense of congruence. You may be tired, but not depleted because it's fueling. You may be challenged, but not consistently fighting yourself. So examples are building a business because you genuinely care about the mission and things just fall together, kind of like Denver Whole Body Collective is for me. Another example is parenting in a way that reflects your values even when it's hard. Great example with Josie Girl right now. We're in our hitting stage, right? People will say, distract or gentle hands or all of these different things, but it's figuring out what feels best for you as a parent and reflects your values. And for me as a parent, I'm like, oh, she's hitting. What does she need? 9 times out of 10, she needs something and she's trying to get somebody's attention. And so when I figure out what the need is and we meet it, the hitting stops immediately. So yes, we can say gentle hands all day, but for her, that honestly, she'll hit harder because the need's not being met. So parenting in a way that reflects this, having difficult conversations because honesty matters to you. It's hard to do and they suck. But when you leave a hard conversation and you feel good about it, right, that means you were in alignment to have it and it's important to you. So, in order to understand if you're aligned, some questions you can ask yourself are: does this fit with who I am and where I want to go? If you don't stop and take the time to evaluate that question when you're making hard decisions, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're probably making decisions based off your logical brain and not what actually you're feeling and allowing to flow and what is actually aligned. Is this effort connected to something I value? Oftentimes we pursue things and we're pursuing them for financial gain or because someone else suggested it, or it might feel right, but not fully. So it's important to evaluate, like, is this connected to something I value and care about? Like, I care about coordinated care and I want a space where I connect whole body practitioners and mental health practitioners. So that's something I deeply value. And I think part of the flow that I'm having there. Am I choosing this or am I reacting to something? This is a huge one. We can react all day long to what the universe hands us, but oftentimes when we are choosing to actively do something, it's in alignment with us. So when we talk about alignment, I also want to talk about misalignment. So misalignment often shows up when we're chronically overthinking something, like when you are sitting there trying to make a decision and you keep thinking it through over and over. That is often a very good sign that it's actually not aligned and you are trying to force it. When a decision that you're making is building resentment, that is a great way to understand that you're misaligned. A good example of that is when I see clients and I break my boundaries like later at night and then I miss bedtime with my girly, always builds resentment. 9 times out of 10, I'm feeling that resentment unless it's an emergency or I've figured something out in my week to where I get home earlier a different day. But resentment is another way where we are misaligned. Exhaustion. Oftentimes when you are in alignment, it is fueling you and fueling your soul, and we're not depleted in the same way. Like you feel differently. Like, yeah, it might lead to some exhaustion, but not in a depleting way. There's still fuel there. And another thing that comes up when we're misaligned is, why is this so hard energy, if you will? We're forcing it. The next part of the authentic alignment discussion is how we always fit these square pegs in round holes, right? Like forcing versus listening. So forcing is over efforting, trying to convince yourself, or ignoring internal resistance. It feels like movement against yourself. I have to. Everyone else can do this. What's wrong with me? The energy behind the action is often fear, pressure, comparison, guilt, or urgency. So we need to stop and name those things and realize, like, okay, where is this energy coming from and is it mine? What we talked about last month, right? Like taking a minute to pause and figure out whose energy is in your force field. Examples of this are continuing to say yes when you're exhausted, or pushing through burnout because stopping feels unsafe, or chasing a goal that you don't actually want because it looks successful. This happens to a lot of business owners, right? Well, if I have a full caseload and I'm sitting here talking about how full I am, I must be successful. Well, you being full might be leading to your burnout and mean you're ignoring boundaries. I have these conversations in consultation groups with other therapists all the time. Great that you're full. And it often doesn't signal success. It can often signal burnout. But the outcome may not look productive to societal standards, but the cost is often a disconnection from yourself. So the difference isn't effort, it's whether you're partnering with yourself or overriding yourself. Hard because it's growth versus hard because it's not for you are very different things. Staying in roles that no longer fit or trying to make something work because it should aren't in alignment. And when they're not in alignment, they're going to fail or be more challenging for reasons you don't need to get into. So this can often lead to us trying to figure out and navigate, okay, when am I performing roles versus doing the things that are aligned? Performing roles happens when the role becomes louder than the person. Instead of asking, what do I need? We're asking, what would a good mom do? What would a successful entrepreneur do, partner do, therapist do? And over time, that role becomes the identity. And how we've talked about before, like, we don't want one thing, one hat that we're wearing to be our identity. So you have to stop checking in with yourself and start measuring yourself against your expectations. So the challenge is that roles are endless and a role will always ask for more. A role has no nervous system or limits or capacity, but you do. So signs that you're performing a role are when you feel responsible for everyone else's experience, or you're struggling to identify your own needs while you're fulfilling a role. Rest can feel selfish, right? We're responding with, you don't know what you want outside of your responsibilities. So how we pivot from just performing the role to listening to ourselves, we're paying attention to what you feel, what you need, what matters to you, what your capacity actually is. It's listening to yourself and remaining connected to your internal experience. So this doesn't mean you always get your way, because that's not life, but it means that your voice gets a seat at the table and we're taking time to hear it. A lot of highlight reels say stop and meditate, right? This can bring me to an entire sidebar about how when you are at a certain space in your trauma healing, meditation isn't accessible, and that is a real thing. But when these highlight reels are the buzzword of like stop and focus on yourself, what I mean by that, when you're finding your authentic alignment and what actually listening to yourself means, is literally taking the time for silence. And it could be meditation for you, but it could also be like, okay, I have these 3 decisions in front of me. And what do I need from them? What feels good to me? And what decision is calling me forward that feels the best? And it's taking the minute to be silent with yourself. Sometimes it's asking yourself, like, what do I think? What do I want? What feels true? What do I need right now? And listening to yourself creates this self-trust because you learn that your experience matters and you feel disconnected despite being highly productive when you're not hearing you. This really leads us to this huge truth of the world isn't meant to serve us. And so we need to really be grounded without being discouraging, and not everything is meant for you. And misalignment isn't failure, and rejection isn't unworthiness. Alignment we can look at as a filter instead of something we have to earn. So it's grief of letting go of what you wanted and the tension that that can create when we need to accept what that looks like and relinquish control. So just because you want it doesn't mean it's yours. And that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. So for example, let's say you have 2 business opportunities in front of you, and I'm going to keep using Denver Whole Body Collective as my aligned approach here. So for me, let's say that another business decision is in front of me. That just, I've accepted it. I know it's happening. It's flowing. The providers are coming. People want this space and need this space. And I just feel this energy that's so organic and everything is just falling into place. And so I know it's meant to be. Whereas other business opportunities I've had, it's like, okay, we're going to go through the lease process. Stop. This isn't working out. This expense is too high. This isn't feeling good. I'm negotiating and it's not going well. Okay, I push through all of that, right? Now I need to bring people in to do X, Y, Z. Okay, I'm finding people who aren't feeling good. Like I'm gut checking and I'm trying to make things work versus it feel good and I know it's going to work. And those differences, even though I really want this other path, right? The difference in hitting these walls constantly versus this is just flowing are so different, completely different. And we can grieve that we really want to make this work, but it might just not be aligned right now, whereas this might be. And it's taking the time to just sit with that and accept that and realize I can control what's flowing and it feels good. And I can't control this other opportunity. And this opportunity, it might not be what's meant for me right now. So just because I want it doesn't mean it's mine. And that doesn't mean something's wrong with me. It's a hard one to sit with. So there could also always be multiple options. Let's say both of these business opportunities are right options and they can exist. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out what one feels the best. And alignment isn't always so obvious. It's felt over time. So as I'm building this collective, it keeps building and it keeps progressing and more keeps coming and flowing. And that's how I know it's in alignment. But as I'm building my option 2 over here and I'm just hitting roadblock after roadblock, that's when I'm feeling misaligned. And so in those scenarios, I have to slow down instead of rushing clarity and letting decisions kind of settle in my body and taking more me time and alone time to kind of navigate both options and really evaluate what feels expansive versus constricting and taking the time to listen to myself. So I mentioned the nervous system before, and the nervous system plays a really, really huge role in how we align with ourselves. And it's not authentic alignment isn't just like a mindset, it's also a nervous system experience. So many people think of this as about knowing what you want, but we often already know what we want. The challenge is that your nervous system may not feel safe enough to act on it. And I want to name that because although I might feel very aligned with my collective, right, that I've been referring to. My nervous system might fear financial scarcity if that's in my background, or we might have people who are approaching us who are not a good fit, which can challenge my nervous system. And so that might make me take pause and like not act or move forward on it. But that doesn't mean it's not aligned. So you have to take the minute to filter through things too. So other examples of this are like, you need rest, but your nervous system equates productivity with safety. You want to say no, but your nervous system fears that rejection and letting someone down. Our relationships isn't working, but your nervous system is more comfortable with the familiar than the unknown. I see so many people get stuck in this, right? And I'm going to make the square peg fit in the round hole because this is what I know and I'm used to versus I've outgrown this relationship. When the nervous system is operating from survival, we tend to make decisions based on avoiding discomfort, preventing conflict, seeking approval of others, or maintaining predictability. But when the nervous system is regulated and we take the time to align, we are more able to make decisions based on values, needs, desires, long-term well-being. And in that sense, authentic alignment is less about finding yourself and more about creating enough internal safety to hear yourself. So this nervous system lens is giving us the ability to also have internal safety, which is a deeper layer of this authentic alignment and turning that from buzzwords into the actual experience that we're having. I think it's also honestly the missing piece in this conversation about alignment and boundaries. So another layer of this is your nervous system influences how you interpret your decisions. If your nervous system is dysregulated, we can't align with ourselves or actually hear ourselves. And so we might be making decisions that are not in alignment and not even realizing it, which happens for a lot of people because when we're dysregulated, we can shut down or we don't stop moving, right? Like different bodies react differently to nervous system dysregulation, but the nervous system influences how we interpret our decisions. And the breakdown can be anxiety, which is always misalignment, and calm, which is always alignment. So trauma responses can make safe things feel unsafe, right? Our brain is tricking us because we're reacting. And familiar chaos can feel right when really it's just familiar. So the tools we need to use in these scenarios when we're feeling these things are pausing before making decisions and regulating first to then decide second. Oftentimes you'll hear many business coaches, entrepreneurs, and just decision makers say how they have to stop and take a beat before they can make a big decision. And this is part of that. It's finding the alignment in the decision instead of deciding just because an opportunity was given to you. It's why people say sleep on it, right? Or take a day to think about it before accepting a new job, for example. We got to pause before deciding, regulate first, decide second. This is a great point to ask yourself, what am I feeling versus what I'm thinking? And while you're thinking through the decision that you're making, come back to how you're feeling. And if you can't get a read on your body, that is a signal we're dysregulated, and then start utilizing your coping skills to find regulation to then make this decision from a regulated space. Oftentimes when we're making decisions, we have this stuck point that we all hit, and it's moving from this vague stuck point into clarity. So we often misidentify the problem. On the surface, it's like, I can't decide, right? But the real root of that is the fear, the identity shift, the safety, the moving from comfort, although it might be uncomfortable, to something new. So questions that I want you to ask yourself when you're feeling this, I can't decide, but the real root of that is the fear, identity shift, safety, is like, what am I actually afraid of here? What would this decision mean about me to others and to myself? What am I trying to avoid feeling? So stuck can be actually protective, not broken or that you don't know. Sometimes when we hit stuck points, it's just we need to take a minute to come back into alignment to figure out the best move forward. Oftentimes stuck has this such a negative perception and connotation to it where it's like, I just can't decide. And we get so frustrated with the fact that we can't decide that it actually increases our dysregulation. So then our ability to make this decision we move further and further away from that. So instead of getting stuck in that spiral, I really want us to focus on the root of that spiral, which is what's actually there. And that stuck can actually be protective to you and mean that you need to slow down and take a minute to make the decision, write it out, talk to your humans, take a minute to be silent and think and sit with what the decisions would feel like to you and go from there instead of hyperfixating on the stuck piece, because that can be protecting you. Another part of this equation is how boundaries play with alignment. Oftentimes, alignment requires action and not just awareness. When misalignment is something that's coming from overgiving or people pleasing, it means we're also lacking our boundaries, right? So boundaries protect our alignment and go hand in hand when it comes to being regulated. Oftentimes, when we feel we need to put a boundary in place, it's because we're holding something that's not ours and we need to release it and give it back to that person. But that can feel really uncomfortable because we were never taught as a society how to put boundaries in and why. And oftentimes, when we say we're going to set a boundary, the perception, the immediate perception is you're selfish or you're not going to meet my needs. So I'm going to react poorly to that. And therefore, it makes it really uncomfortable for us to set boundaries. But many boundary challenges are actually nervous system challenges. We don't struggle because we don't know the boundary. We struggle when we need to enforce the boundary. And that's when the guilt and anxiety and fear of disappointing people and fear of being misunderstood and of possible conflict coming up happen. And those reactions are often our nervous system responses and not evidence that a boundary is wrong. In fact, sometimes the discomfort you feel after setting a healthy boundary is simply your nervous system adjusting to the new pattern. So I want to normalize that guilt doesn't mean it's wrong, and others may resist your alignments. And that's okay. If you don't set boundaries, your life will always reflect someone else's alignment, not yours. And then you'll always remain unaligned. I know that's really hard to sit with, but I think it's very in line with all of the past concepts we've been talking about, right? When we feel the split, oftentimes it's the pressure we're facing from others, not our own. And it's a form of feeling unaligned when we're splitting, right? When we talked about Mother's Day, meeting other people's needs before your own and actually doing what you need on Mother's Day, for example, right? That's what we need to be doing. That's ways that we are in alignment and we are resisting societal and other people's things being put onto us. So, how do we actually move towards this alignment piece? I'm going to break it down into some easy steps because I love steps, as we all know. So, first, I want you to ask yourself, what is true for me? So, when you hit a decision or you're feeling like you are getting pushed back, what is your truth? Next, second step is I want you to evaluate your nervous system. Do I feel safe enough to acknowledge my truth or act on my truth? And if not, what feels unsafe and how do I re-regulate to feel safe in making a decision that might be flowing? Third, you set your boundaries. What behaviors, limits, or choices protect the truth? The fourth step is take a minute to listen to you. Get silent. I know that sounds so just like, oh God, another person telling me to take time for myself and meditate or whatever. Not even telling you to meditate. I often feel a lot of people when they do meditate come to these conclusions, or they're just clearing their mind, which is also not a bad thing. But I want you to take time when you're in the decision-making process to just be silent and figure out, okay, what am I feeling? Does my body feel good about this? Does my body feel bad about this? Where is that gut decision? So when those four pieces align and work together, people often experience less resentment and overwhelm and more congruence between who they are and how they live and what decisions feel best for them. That might be one of the clearest signs of alignment is when your life starts requiring less performance and allows for more presence, which is what we've been trying to do. So we're going to ask ourselves what's true for me. We're going to evaluate our nervous system. We're going to set our boundaries and we're going to take a moment to listen to ourselves. What does this feel like physically? We're going to have those four steps. And then we're also going to implement this framework. Awareness around where I'm misaligned comes up in those steps. I want you to body check. We're feeling like what this physically looks like. We're naming the fears and the roots underneath our decisions, and we're avoiding the spiral. And then once we take that time, what's one small move that you can make that feels aligned versus a life overhaul? Is it one honest conversation? Is it one small boundary? Is it one delayed decision instead of rushing into something? So, in order to find this authentic alignment, I want you to ask, where in your life are you trying to force something to fit instead of asking if it actually does? What would you change if you trusted your body as much as your thoughts? That one hits home for me. Oftentimes, I need to physically stop, and that's honestly when I get sick because my body is telling me you need to stop and take a minute to reflect on what you need. I always get sick when I'm in decision fatigue and it's my body fully shutting down. But what if I preventatively addressed that and started asking myself these things earlier? What are you holding on to that no longer fits who you are becoming when we're filling and sitting in those roles versus doing things that feel good to you? What are we holding on to that doesn't serve us anymore? Alignment isn't just about getting it perfect, but it's about coming back to your body and yourself again and again. In reflection on this episode's content, earlier I said self-abandonment, and I wanted to revisit that. So, self-abandonment is when you repeatedly leave yourself to maintain something else. So, a relationship or a role or an expectation or an image or someone else's comfort. It's the moment when you know what you need and you feel what you need, or you recognize what's true for you and you choose to override it. It's when we say yes instead of saying no. Most people don't self-abandon because they're weak. They self-abandon because at some point it felt safer to disconnect from themselves than risk disappointing someone else. Self-abandonment is a huge trauma response, right? When we go back to our main trauma responses of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, we don't want to disappoint anyone, so we're going to fawn and we're just going to people please and abandon ourselves in the process. So, some of the signs of self abandonment I also want you to watch out for, which are ways that we pivot from alignment, are saying yes when you mean no, constantly overriding your own needs, explaining away your feelings, prioritizing everyone else's comfort over your own well being, ignoring exhaustion, resentment, and burnout. Maybe it's where your body gets sick or something. Me, making decisions based on what others expect and losing sight of what you actually want. The sneaky part of this is self-abandonment rarely feels like abandonment. It often feels like being responsible or helpful or productive or the good parent or partner or leader, which is why it can go unnoticed for years. And I think it's also why a lot of people don't like the term self-abandonment in itself because they're like, oh, that's so extreme. But it's really not that extreme at all. It's actually what's happening. The cost of self-abandonment is eventually your body starts keeping the score. You notice the resentment, the irritability, that chronic overwhelm, the decision fatigue, feeling disconnected from yourself, feeling like you're living a life that looks successful but doesn't feel like yours. So self-abandonment and alignment go hand in hand because authentic alignment isn't about finding yourself. It's about stopping the ways you've learned to leave yourself. Some people are facing a midlife crisis or retirement crisis or, transitioning from schooling into career, right? We are often asking ourselves the question, well, like, what do I want or what feels good to me? Instead of asking ourselves the question about, well, where have I departed from myself? And it's not about going backwards because everything has intention and purpose. It's often recognizing where you've been overriding what you already know. Often the work isn't discovering or rediscovering something new about yourself. So the reflection questions I want you to ask are, where am I saying yes when I want to be saying no? Where am I trying to earn belonging by abandoning myself? And why? Get a little deeper on that one. What truth have I been negotiating with? What am I tolerating that no longer fits? And if I trusted myself more, what would change? Misalignment often isn't a sign that you've lost yourself. It's a sign that you've gotten into the habit of leaving yourself. And alignment is the practice of coming back, not the rediscovery of something new. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate it, as always. Please share this podcast with somebody you love or someone who you want to learn and teach alignment to. And join us for this month when we are joined by an incredible guest that we're going to get into some of the spirituality around alignment. And I also want to name, right, like such a buzzword to call alignment spirituality, but that is our society. We're going to name that and leave it there. I can't wait to see the hat rack questions that come from this. So please send them my way. And I look forward to sharing more with you throughout July. Please reach out, share, go review, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.